You to be caught off guard. Are you ready? Join Storm Tracker Tishan Gomes for Riding the Storms, a 30-minute program bringing you step-by-step information about the hurricane season. 6:30 p.m. every Monday here on Kyrie FM. Come on, let's all ride the storms together.
It is 6:30 p.m. on Monday evening, and you know what that means. It is another episode of Riding the Storms. This episode is brought to you by J. Astafan and Company Limited, Fine Food Incorporated, and the New India Assurance. We will be right back after these messages.
Can your roof withstand the test of time, weather conditions, and keep you covered? Well, J. Astafan's Home and Building has you covered with quality roof sheeting. Available in a variety of colors and sizes, our roof sheeting is perfect for both industrial and commercial use. And guess what? Not only are we keeping you covered, we're saving you money with 50% off. Shop today at our Canefield Distribution Center. Call 237-2744 or 255-2792. Offer valid while stocks last. Terms and conditions apply. J. Astafans. Right place, right price.
Dominicans, enjoy your property, protect your property. You homeowner and businessman, protect your property, enjoy your property. Can't wait for the hurricane, can't wait till you flood again, can't wait till your roof fly out and all your business coming out. Remember, no insurance company will insure your property when a storm is approaching. Get ahead of the hurricane season and insure with a company who gives you the assurance of payment for your valid claim. Come speak with us today at the New India Assurance Company Limited, upstairs AC Shillingford and Company Limited, 24 King George 5th Street, Roseau. Bring along an up-to-date valuation from a qualified engineer and get insured today.
After the hurricane, if you do not have power and cannot boil water, add 8 drops of clean and white bleach per gallon of water. Let the water sit uncapped for at least 10 minutes before drinking. Make your drinking water safe. This is your hurricane tip from Clean and White Bleach, distributed by Fine Food.
And we are back with Riding the Storms. Today we have a guest from the government of Dominica, Mr. Glenroy Toussaint. Hello, good evening, Mr. Toussaint. How are you doing today?
Good evening. It's always a pleasure to be here, and I want to say a pleasant good evening to your listeners, both here and abroad.
Yeah, so, how was the day been for you so far?
Well, it's kind of hectic, so to speak, but like anything else, you've got to cope and do what you've got to do to ensure that you continue to provide service to your fellow Dominican.
Agreed. It is understood that you are an employee of the government of Dominica, more specifically the local government commissioner. So can you tell us a little bit more about your role as an employee of the government?
Oh, yeah, thank you very much. Essentially, my role is to provide oversight for the various local authorities we have in Dominica. And so we have the City Council, the Roseau City Council, the Portsmouth Town Council, the Canefield Urban Council, the Kalinago Council, and 37 village councils. So we provide the oversight in terms of ensuring that the councils are keeping with the mandate of the good governance of the various localities. We call it village, district, or municipalities, whatever the case may be. And we have that responsibility to ensure, particularly as it relates to the efficient and effective accounting of funds channeled through the councils through development activities and programs. We also ensure that the capacity is built, certainly build the capacity of the councillors in meeting that challenge of ensuring that there is some prospect of development in the various localities and village districts and municipalities.
So here on our show, we want to get the public to understand a little bit better of things regarding hurricanes, and I understand that you also, I won't say manage, but you're also responsible for the oversight of the hurricane shelters. So one of the first questions is, what is the update on the latest hurricane shelters that are being constructed? What is the latest update on this?
Okay, just before I go into your question, I think it's important that we understand, and when we talk of disaster management, one of the fundamental functions of disaster management is saving lives. And how best do you do that? In to ensure that persons are in a safe environment, secure and comfortable environment, hence the significance and importance of shelter management. And certainly that's one of the key functions of the shelter subcommittee, the NIPO shelter subcommittee that I chair. I'm the chairman of that subcommittee. Now, just to answer you now, as far as it regards your questions, there are two regional emergency shelters that are being built, and of course, we had our challenges after Maria, and one of the fundamental concept that the government of Dominica took on board is the construction of regional emergency shelters. We know of the challenges of the facilities were heavily impacted during Maria, and so it was felt that we needed to look at the concept of, as I said, regional shelters with a view to easing the burden on the schools. We had a number of challenges of schools having to be out for months after Maria, and so we wanted to, the government of Dominica rather wanted to correct that, and so we have two of those currently being built. One at Jimit, which is roughly about 55% completed, and of course Cassibus between 30 and 40% complete. When completed, these two emergency shelters will really form the nucleus of shelter management in Dominica, because, for example, the Jimit shelter will cover the areas as far back as Fonkole to Taru, and you saw that wide spectrum. We're talking of the Cassie Bruce which cover Kalinago, and the Petit Soufriere, San Sauvé, Good Hope areas. There's also, the stages are really advanced in the construction of a regional shelter specific for the Kalinago territory that will be funded by the Caribbean Development Bank, and of course the design has been completed, and hopefully during the course of this year we will have this facility constructed specific to serve the needs of the people in the Kalinago territory. And of course, a few years ago, our first regional emergency shelter was built in Layo, which is serving a good purpose and will continue to serve a good purpose in Dominica.
All right, and to add to your point of the schools, I remember St. Martin Primary School has actually been used as a, I won't say official, but an unofficial shelter, because a lot of people that were living in that area, they were always, during the hurricane, they moved to St. Martin School, and as a matter of fact, that caused the school to be pushed back in terms of the restart after the hurricane. Because I know most of us wanted to get back to school, get back to some kind of normalcy, but people who still inhabiting the St. Martin Secondary School. So to have these new shelters being constructed, it makes perfect sense that at least actually there will be a place, a large enough place that many people can go to. So that is a good initiative. And I know there are some people who use their houses as hurricane shelters, all those things. Okay, so in terms of the shelters,
I just want to add, as you said, I don't want your listeners to get the impression that with the emergence of these regional shelters, we're not going to have satellite shelters. It doesn't mean you're not going to have those shelters, yes, but what it does is for it sort of help you, in terms of your shelter stock. So, for example, as you mentioned, after we are impacted by a system, a hazard, hurricane, storm, whatever the case may be, you can do more long-term sheltering in those regional shelters as opposed to those we have currently in terms of the schools and what have you. But I wanted to also indicate to you, as we're talking of shelters, that we have seen a significant improvement in our shelter stock in Dominica. And that is primarily because of government's continued comprehensive housing revolution program. And importantly, this initiative has seen several households building back better. And a number of apartment buildings have also provided support to vulnerable families in a safe environment. I did mention the Layu Emergency Shelter and, of course, the 2 shelters, regional shelters that have been constructed. But as well, there are 2 important community facilities that were recently constructed, one in Vickers and in Trafalgar, community centers, and those 2 facilities are also going to assist in that regard. And very significant for us, though, is that there is a facility that was recently built as well in the Yampis area that will serve the Yampis community. It will serve as a community center, a preschool, and of course an emergency shelter, and that will augur well for shelter management in the Yampis stock farm area. So that in itself is a plus. And I will tell you, for example, we did an assessment in 2020, and there were roughly about 4,600 people who required to be sheltered during that 2020 Atlantic hurricane season. For the 2021 Atlantic hurricane season, a similar exercise was conducted, and that figure was reduced by 669. So we're moving from 4,600 people in 2020 to be sheltered in designated shelters to 3,931 in 2021. Of course, as I indicated, we've seen a decrease of 669. That number will continue to decrease with the commissioning of the apartment buildings at the back of the Dominica Grammar School. That will accommodate a number of families in the Roseau area, Roseau Central Catchment area, and certainly that will augur well for our shelter stock in Dominica. Additionally, we have identified and, of course, confirmed 114 emergency shelters to be used for the 2021 Atlantic hurricane season. That has increased by 3 compared to 111 in 2020. So we are making headway as far as shelter management is concerned and providing the facilities to ease the burden and the plight of our people in Dominica.
Yeah, that's also very good. The fact that we were able to bring it down by over 600 people, that makes a lot of sense. And the mere fact that not only are we bringing down the number of people that require shelter, we also bring up the number of shelters. And I am sure that all of the shelters that we have currently, as you said, the 114 shelters, these shelters can actually cater for those people that can or who need to be sheltered. Obviously, if somebody thinks that their house is ready for hurricane and it ends up getting destroyed, they are still they'll be still welcome to the shelter. But at the same time, it is good that we're actually making some kind of headway in the event of anything. And as a matter of fact, Friday was Hurricane Elsa. Dominica was under tropical storm warning. So, if anything, people could have gone to one or a few of the shelters. But as we get into the peak of the season, it is good that we have those things in place. So, in the event that anything actually happens, okay, for my community, I know where to go to that place and so on and so on. So that's also very good. 114, that's a very good number of shelters. And I understand that some of these shelters got damaged after Maria. Were they able to be, I assume they'll be reconstructed by now or at least repaired, some of these shelters.
Well, the thing is, I clearly indicated earlier of the challenges that we had. In fact, prior to Maria, we had 140 emergency shelters. And over 50% of those shelters were either damaged, some were destroyed, and significantly damaged. So we've had to resort to mechanisms of improving and enhancing. And we have been teaming up, the government of Dominica has been teaming up with the International Organization for Migration since 2019 in the renovation and improvement of some of those facilities and providing supplies. In fact, in 2019, a total number of 16 emergency shelters were renovated, and of course, requisite supplies were provided to the shelters. In 2021, we have made improvement renovation to 7 emergency shelters, and we are providing supplies to 55 of those emergency shelters. And the supplies we're talking of bed cots, we're talking of mattresses, we're talking of blankets, first aid kits, we're talking of refrigerators, we're talking of stoves, we're talking of kitchen sets, hygiene sets, and the likes. So that in itself will certainly boost our ability in terms of shelter administration in Dominica.
Very good, very good. We're gonna take a short break. I have some more questions for Mr. Toussaint, but you're gonna take a short break and listen to our sponsors. We will be right back after some of the messages from our sponsors.
Can your roof withstand the test of time, weather conditions, and keep you covered? Well, J. Astefan's Home and Building has you covered with quality roof sheeting. Available in a variety of colors and sizes, our roof sheeting is perfect for both industrial and commercial use. And guess what? Not only are we keeping you covered, we're saving you money with 50% off. Shop today at our Canefield Distribution Center. Call 237-2744 or 255-2792. Offer valid while stocks last. Terms and conditions apply. J. Astefans. Right place, right price.
Dominicans, enjoy your property, protect your property. You homeowner and businessman, protect your property, enjoy your property. Can't wait for the hurricane, can't wait till you flood again, can't wait till your roof fly out and all your business coming out. Remember, no insurance company will insure your property when a storm is approaching. Get ahead of the hurricane season and insure with a company who gives you the assurance of payment for your valid claim. Come speak with us today at the New India Assurance Company Limited, upstairs AC Shillingford and Company Limited, 24 King George 5th Street, Roseau. Bring along an up-to-date valuation from a qualified engineer and get insured today.
After the hurricane, if you do not have power and cannot boil water, add 8 drops of clean and white bleach per gallon of water. Let the water sit uncapped for at least 10 minutes before drinking. Make your drinking water safe. This is your hurricane tip from Clean and White Bleach, distributed by Fine Food.
And we are back with Riding the Storm with myself, Toussaint Gomes, and our guest tonight, Mr. Glenroy Toussaint. So, we have the shelters being put in place. And I just want to know what would be some of the rules and regulations when it comes to being in a shelter. Because, I mean, the shelter is not our personal houses, so we cannot just do as we please. So, what are some of the rules and regulations that will be put in place for those shelters?
Okay. I just need to add, as you say, you are speaking of rules and regulation. We've had to, we are dealing with COVID-19, and we must not forget. And so we have had to develop a guideline specific for sheltering at emergency shelters during COVID-19. I will come to this specific guideline. But overall, we have our shelter rules and regulations. And if I were to give you some of them, one is that all existing laws of the country will be enforced. So whatever we have existing in the country will be enforced. We have things like no dangerous weapons, liquids or other safety hazards shall be kept by shelterers. Smoking will not be permitted in the shelter. No alcoholic beverages will be consumed within the shelter areas. We're talking of serious weapons. We're talking of no pets. I've always been talking about that, cautioning people that when you come to the shelter, you have to ensure that you take care of your pets. You have to provide a shelter for the pets. So the emergency shelter is not for pets. So we don't allow pets at the emergency shelter, at the emergency shelters. And so we're encouraging people. People have to observe hygiene, personal hygiene, especially we in COVID. And so that is important. We're talking of ensuring that sleeping areas are kept clean and tidy at all times. But while we talk of the rules also, we need to allow people to understand that the shelters that we provide is to provide a comfort for between 24 to 48 hours to ride the storm. And people have to understand that. Initial shelter management is about riding the storm or riding the event or riding the hazard. After having ridden the hazard, you do an assessment. The individual will have to do an assessment of their homes and their own situation, and following which, we will look at long term. But certainly we want people to understand that when you come to the shelters. We also want people to, I often said to it, and people said, they laugh when I say it, that do not come to the shelters with your hands swinging. Obviously, we have people in Dominica, who are vulnerable and may not have the ways and means to come to the shelter with, a few bottles of water and dry foods and stuff like that, and maybe even blanket and the likes. But certainly we expect people to come to the shelters with their medication, if they're not safe, with their bank books. And so I know people are very concerned about those little documents.
Like
bank books, passports, those personal documents are very important. So we're asking people to secure that and come to the shelter secure with those stuff. And we want people to ensure that, we keep the peace. It's not very many people who like noise at the shelter. And in fact, when we are riding the storm, what we should be doing more by and large is praying. And sharing and protecting. Yes, that's what we should be doing. Not necessarily property in that.
But your life at least.
But life, yes. Mm-hmm. But importantly, yes, we have to do that, and so we have to have this sort of caring for each other, this love for each other, this concern for each other, and to understand that not everybody, people deal with things differently. So one anxiety level may be as high as 100, if you want to say it. Another person for the same system, it may be as low as 30. So we have to understand those things when we are getting ourselves in our emergency shelters.
Some people I won't say they take light of the situation, but they like making jokes. So sometimes the jokes are a way of coping, but they also need to understand that not everybody goes around like that. And in talking about the pets, seeing that the pets are not allowed in the hurricane shelters, which institution is responsible for actually protecting the pets or sheltering the pets, given that they are not allowed in the shelters?
I think that's an individual responsibility. The individual has to take that responsibility in securing his or her pets. And so it is important that they understand that. So the thing is, that's where it comes to the whole question of emergency planning. So there is supposed to be family plans. And in your family planning, it would incorporate your pets and your other stuff. So you would, for example, in your plan and say, well, we've got about 10 pets. What do we do when a storm is approaching? Do we put them somewhere? Do we ensure that? You have to ensure that they're safe.
Yeah.
Excellent. So, knowing the fact that you can't get them to the shelters, you now have to find a mechanism within your plan. And that is why we want to emphasize and to encourage people to develop family plans, family emergency plans. It's important.
Every family is different, so you need to personally have your personalized plan for what you have to do. If you know you have 5 pets or 6 pets, make sure you have a place to put those pets. Because I know for the viewers and the listeners, those also listening, we know that we're not allowed pets in the shelter, so we should, if you have your nice little poodle, your cat, whatever it is, since they are not allowed in the shelter, you have to get some other kind of plan. If you put it in I know some people have their kennels and their dog houses and their cat house and whatever the case is. But if you really need to go to a shelter and you cannot bring your pets, you should have those things in place. And when you're doing those plans, you shouldn't do the plan 1 day, 2 days before the storm. The thing is, right, 1 day, 2 days, people panicking. And as you're talking about hand swinging, some people, anytime a storm is around us, you always see Dominicans flooding the supermarkets, flooding the convenience stores to get things. So, I know there will be people who are unfortunate and will be unable, but for the most part, you'll see people always going back and forth, getting things, making sure property is secured, and if they have to move to the shelter, they will move on to the shelter. But in terms of a list of the shelters, where can we find the list of the shelters? I know on the ODM website has some shelters, but I'm not sure if it is updated to include the 3 new shelters that are being erected.
Once we've confirmed the shelters, it would include the total shelters that are confirmed. But I want to go back to when COVID, right?
Yes,
when COVID-19. Yes. And so, as I indicated earlier, we have developed an emergency shelter COVID guideline. And I want to inform the listening public that everyone who is going to be at the shelters will wear a mask. It's mandatory. So wearing of masks is mandatory at the shelters. We're asking people to bring their personal mask, their rubbing alcohol or hand sanitizers. As I indicated, there are some people in Dominica who may not have the luxury of being able to afford those stuff. So we will be making some accommodation for those individuals. But we're not saying that we're going to provide masks and hand sanitizers for everybody.
No, I mean, if
that's not possible.
If you're capable people, you can bring your own figure. I think being over 1 year into the pandemic, most of us have made those adjustments already. Everybody has more than one mask. I know some people use the single-use mask, use it for 1 day, they dispose of it. They have a bunch of them. Other people have the cloth mask. So at least, given that we are a whole year into the pandemic, we should have those things already on deck. We first, the rubbing alcohol, the cloth mask, all those things. We should have those things on deck. So it's just a matter of knowing, and we have to respect the guidelines of the hurricane shelters. Because once again, it's not our own home. We can't just come in the shelters and do what we want. Alright, we have to respect the guidelines, no violence, no weapons, and as a matter of fact, all these things are also on the website, isn't that? So it's also on the ODM website where the disaster shelters are. So even if you haven't heard all the guidelines tonight, you can always go on odm.gov.dm. That's correct, right, sir?
That's correct.
odm.gov.dm, and you look under resources, if I remember correctly, and you will find the disaster shelters there with the rules, and at the end of the page you see hurricane shelters. And I think for every city, let's say if you're living in Guata Village, you click Guata Village, you have the name of the shelter manager, and the assistant manager. So you have all that information on the ODM website. But as Mr. Toussaint said, when the latest structures have been fully completed, and you know from earlier in the show he said that some of the buildings are being renovated, all those updates will be made. Alright, but before we leave tonight, any final words you want to say?
Yeah, I just want to encourage our listening public and Dominicans by and large to get vaccinated. I think it's important that we get vaccinated. We oftentimes I'm reminded that we need to free up, so to speak. But we cannot free up if we are all not vaccinated. And so I really want to encourage our people to get vaccinated. There are myths and misconceptions about vaccination and all of those things.
I think all of us have heard them.
And so we want to encourage our people. That is the only way we can get back to normalcy by as many people as possible. I think the what they were looking at is between 70 to 80% of the population and that sort of thing.
Immunity,
Yes, herd immunity. So certainly, we want to encourage people. We also want to encourage our listeners to take disaster management very seriously. Ensure that there is a family plan. Ensure that you do whatever is necessary. I mean, I was amazed, maybe, and that is understood, of the activity, when the watch was issued. And later for tropical storm.
In 3 hours, you
Elsa,
go from
subsequently hurricane. Yes, you had people doing some serious shopping and cats and stuff like that. And then the whole place was just, kind of challenging.
But in as much as we need to take those things seriously, I still think if we have the plans in place as individuals and as a country and so forth, things will be easier. Because if the tropical storm was a one-day event, right? But I saw people went to do shopping over $100, $200, $300. I mean, I'm not saying that you're not supposed to be prepared, but you should also gauge the disaster to how much preparation you need to do. We were told from day one that the tropical storm was going to pass, or it would take at least 1 day to pass because of the increased forward speed. Yeah, as soon as I got a tropical storm warning, boom, that's when Dominicans started reacting and moving on and all of that. So we have to take it seriously, yes, but at the same time, we have to understand and gauge ourselves properly. We need to have those things in place. And if you do put in those things as part of your monthly plan, like the groceries, the tin stuff, all those things, if those things are part of your weekly or your monthly grocery list, it'll be much easier on everybody. Because I know every month when I buy groceries every month, I always have those tin stuff and those things there. Maybe during the hurricane season, I might buy a couple of cartons of water just to have their clean drinking water for the family. But I'll always have those tin stuff as a regular thing on the grocery list. And these are things that we need to understand. Just because you're going to get affected by something doesn't mean you have to blow all our money buying something. I don't know where Dominicans find the money, but they tend to find the money to get those things done. So they still have to gauge themselves properly on that. But I'd like to thank Mr. Toussaint for being here first. We have a lot of information. We learned a lot today. Big up to the Bafese disaster team who were tuned in first today. All the viewers on Facebook, all the viewers on the radio and television and so forth. Thanks for listening. We learned a lot today, and hopefully throughout this season, as the season goes along, and the shelters are being updated, we will have more information, and we will have a better idea as to where we have to go during, and let's say if we have to be affected by any kind of system, we will know where we have to go. So thanks to Mr. Toussaint for being with us today. Keep up the good work. Keep on overseeing all the councils, all the hurricane shelters. Keep up the good work. And we will see you next week on another episode of Riding the Storms. Mr. Toussaint, take care of yourself. And we'll see you next time.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Take care.
The 2021 hurricane season is upon us, and we do not want you to be caught off guard. Are you ready? Join Storm Tracker Toussaint Gomes for Riding the Storms, a 30-minute program bringing you step-by-step information about the hurricane season. 6:30 p.m. every Monday here on Kyrie FM. Come on, let's all ride the storms together.
Can your roof withstand the test of time, weather conditions, and keep you covered? Well, J. Astephan's Home and Building has you covered with quality roof sheeting, available in a